Hey there! So today I wanted to talk about SciComm and why I think it's so important that scientists know how to communicate what they're actually doing. So for me, I learned at a very young age that physics and calculus and chemistry textbooks are just way more complicated than they need to be. Once I had a good idea of what they were actually trying to teach me, it was so frustrating that they use so much just intimidating jargon that you really have to already understand the topic if you have any hope of figuring out what the heck they're trying to say. So I was just so frustrated with how complicated these textbooks were. And that's when I really realized that you need to be able to explain things to someone who has no idea what you're talking about if you're going to be an effective scientist. It doesn't matter what you do and how great your work is. If you can't tell other people about it, it doesn't mean much. At the end of the day, science has to be understood. We have to make sure that society understands what we're talking about if we want them to respect us, if we want them to help us, if we want to just make tomorrow better than today. And for me, being first gen, my family doesn't understand what research looks like. They didn't know what spending all day in a wet lab meant, and they just didn't really have an idea of the work I was doing or the research I had and kind of what I was studying in classes. So it really started with me just taking photos, taking videos, trying to explain to them what I was doing because they really wanted to know. They didn't want to be left out of all the cool things I was doing, but they just didn't really know what that meant. So I became very aware of how to explain this to people who just don't really know what you're talking about at first. And obviously they were very willing to find out, but you also have to be able to talk to people who don't agree with what you're saying. So especially as an environmental engineer and climate science, there's a lot of people who disagree with my entire life's work, and that can be very frustrating, but at the end of the day, it's science, it's been proven, it's been shown, and my job is just to make sure that I am focusing on the science, but I'm also doing it for society. Because at the end of the day, science is meant to serve people, and it's meant to make the world a better place. And if your science isn't doing that, then it's kind of just existing in a vacuum, and it's not doing anybody any good. For me, I think it's so important to be able to share what you're doing, and it also helps make sure that you're doing the right thing. I think that we've seen time and time again, especially in some recent publications, that people exist in a vacuum and they're not getting outside opinions. They're just kind of hearing from others that, hey, we need this product, we need to make this, we need to study this, we need to share this, but a lot of it, there's so many missing links that it would just take one person outside of this circle to say, hey, have you considered this? And we would have a lot of better results. Another thing is with tech, it can be very dangerous to just create without thinking about the consequences. And we've seen this time and time again where people can be put in danger by some of these things that are incredibly innovative, but they just have a huge impact, and we have to be aware of the power we have as creators and inventors and scientists, and communicating what we're doing, making sure that others are aware, making sure that we're getting the input from everyone is just crucial to making sure we have a good product at the end of the day. I think that it comes in all different shapes and forms, but every scientist should be good at SciComm. Every scientist should know how to present their arguments and understand where they're coming from. I think it's super important to have a good idea of your hypothesis, explaining your results, explaining how you got there, because a lot of people don't know what that looks like. And being able to explain that to someone who wasn't right there holding your hand every step of the way is just immensely valuable, because most people weren't there. Most people don't understand exactly how you got to this conclusion, and explaining your results in a simple way that anybody can absorb is going to make the entire world a better place. So I would really love to hear what your SciComm looks like, what some helpful tips you might have gotten are, and just what ways you communicate your work. I think there's so many different aspects and media you can share it in, whether that's videos, whether it's paintings. You know, STEAM is really important to you, incorporating art into STEM, and I love seeing that. So I'd really love to hear from you all about how you do SciComm.